Hello,
Hi, this is Jim Lepselter.
Hey, Jim, we're still gathering here. Thanks.
and this
Okay,
is Ruth Ann Price. Okay. Thank you.
Lisa speaking. May I help you?
Lisa, this is your favorite botherer. It's Ruth Ann.
Uh-huh.
I can't see the commission. Am I not supposed to be able to see into the room at this stage?
Let me see. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Chairman Winslow. We're ready when you are. Chairman Winslow, you're on mute.
Can you hear my voice now?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for my lack of technological expertise. We'll start with welcome everyone to the February 19th Delaware Public Service Commission meeting. We have present, as you can see, 4 commissioners and myself, so we have all 5 of us gathered here. The first large item on the calendar is a reading of the meeting minutes of July 29th, 2025, which have been posted in advance and we do not have to read. Does any commissioner have any change or corrections to the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, that would be January 29th, I believe.
I guess it better be January. We haven't gotten to February 29th yet. Thank you.
I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second the motion.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Commissioner Correa,
Aye.
Commissioner Conaway,
Aye.
Commissioner Drexler,
Aye.
Commissioner Gray,
Abstaining, I was not here. I was en route back from DC.
and I will vote aye as well. The motion carries. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any members of the public that would wish to make comments to the Public Service Commission?
Chairman Winslow, we have a list. If you give me just a moment, I'm going to make a brief announcement. Good afternoon, members of the public. When I call your name, you may come to the table, speak directly into the microphone and state your name for the record and proceed with public comment. Each speaker will get 2 minutes, and when your time has expired, I will let you know. You are welcome to submit your public comment in writing by mailing it to our office here at 861 Silver Lake Boulevard, Suite 100, Dover, Delaware, 19904, or by emailing it to us at psc@delaware.gov. If you are participating via Zoom and wish to provide public comment, please use the raise hand function and you will be permitted to unmute when I call your name. We have 1 public comment signed up for in-person public comment, and that is Patty Christopher. Okay, well, our public comment portion is now, okay. So I just need to know if we have anybody on Zoom.
Yes.
I'm looking for public comment on Zoom.
Oh.
Kendall, do we have anybody with the raised hand function? That is all.
There is no public comment, Chairman Winslow.
Okay, thank you all very much. The next item is the consent agenda. Does any commissioner have a matter they want placed on the regular agenda from the consent agenda? Seeing no reaction to that, Commissioner Correa.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the consent agenda? Hearing none, Commissioner Correa,
Aye.
Commissioner Conaway,
Aye.
Commissioner Drexler,
Aye.
Commissioner Gray,
Aye.
and I vote aye, and the consent agenda is approved. On the regular agenda, in the matter of the application of Veolia Water for an increase in water base rates, proposed order number 10645, we should have Ms. Scott for Veolia. Welcome, Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Chair Winslow and members of the commission. Pam Scott here on behalf of Veolia Water, Inc. You have before you today order number 10645. This is the order to open the docket in docket number 250037, which is a base rate case application filed by Veolia on January 15, 2025. The order essentially authorizes Veolia to file for interim rates to be considered later by the commission, also establishes the date by which petitions to intervene need to be filed, appoints Mark Lawrence as the hearing examiner in this matter. We would ask that the commission approve this order.
Thank you very much, Ms. Scott. Ms. Kate Workman, please.
Thank you, Chair Winslow. This is Kate Workman for staff in this matter. Staff agrees with everything that Ms. Scott says and recommends that the commission approve order number 10645. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Workman. Ruth Ann Price?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I certainly can.
We have no objection to the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions of the parties? Commissioner Drexler.
Good afternoon. I move that we approve proposed order number 10645 as presented.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Commissioner Correa,
Aye.
Commissioner Conaway,
Aye.
Commissioner Drexler,
Aye.
Commissioner Gray,
Aye.
and I vote aye. The motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Scott, Ms. Workman, and Ms. Price.
Thank you very
Next
much.
matter on the calendar is in the matter of provision of standard offer supply to retail customers in the service territory of Delmarva Power and Light. And we have, I believe, Brian Geller from staff to introduce this matter.
Thank you, Chairman Winslow. Good afternoon, and commissioners. Today with us virtually, we have Dr. James Letzelter. He is from Liberty Consulting Group. He's a management consultant, has over 30 years of experience in the electric power industry. Liberty was retained by the commission to monitor Delmarva Power's 2025 request for proposals for full requirement supply for its standard offer service, which was filed with the commission in August of 2024. As you'll recall, we held 2 auctions and we awarded all blocks. Dr. Letzelter is here today to present the final report to the commission. The presentation is linked on the commission's agenda and it will be displayed virtually for those attending via Zoom. At the end of the presentation, staff would respectfully request that you accept the final report as presented. And with that, Dr. Letzelter, I will turn the floor to you.
Thank you, Brian. And good afternoon, Chairman Winslow and commissioners. As Brian mentioned, if you could bring my presentation up. I can't see it on my end.
Still working on it, Jim. 1 second.
Okay, great. I just want to know that you have it. I mean, of course, I have my own copy, but
Okay, we're good to go.
okay, great. So this is the technical consultant's final report for the 2025 SOS procurement. And we submitted a final full report this morning. And this, what you'll see today, is just a summary of the findings. And there's much more detail in the written report that's been submitted. So next page, please. So the key findings from 2025 are that the RFP covered 541 megawatts of load. And as far as participation and competition goes, there were more bidders, resulting in an adequate participation level from the suppliers for Risky and MGS. And this is looking at year over year, 2025 versus 24. There were also more bidders and an improvement in participation for both the LGS and GSP blocks versus both 2024 and moreover 2023, which was a very low level of participation. Even though it's improved, we still see room for a little bit of improvement when compared to what levels we had prior to 2023. Also, the RFP process was run successfully from start to finish, and bids were all filled and consistent with the expectations we had for pricing given the overall regional market conditions. Next slide. As usual, there were 13 blocks comprising this 541 megawatts. So in tranche one, as is the typical case, we auctioned off 4 blocks of Risky, 2 of MGS, 1 of LGS, and 1 of GSP. The block sizes were typical, hovering around 50 megawatts approximately for Risky, and MGS, LGS, and GSP really vary much more as customers enter and leave SOS for third-party suppliers. In tranche 2, again, as usual, we had 4 blocks of Risky and 1 of MGS. And you'll see on the right, the total megawatts for each tranche's blocks are listed to comprise that 541 megawatts. Next slide. So winning prices this year, on average, when you look at all the blocks, were substantially higher than what we experienced in 2024. And we'll talk a little bit about the reasons along the way, but you can see they range from as little as 7.9% year over year for LGS to almost 30%, 29.1% for GSP. The residential and small commercial industrial was 25.6% year over year, and MGS was 19.4%. So you can see really substantial increases in the bid prices, which will take effect in June 1st of 2025. Next slide. So the slide you see now has a table that was provided by Delmarva that shows a expected bill impact for customers by customer class. And it compares February 1st of this year bill with an expected bill as of June 1st of this year. And again, we see a 7.5% increase expected for residential, and then all of the other classes vary widely depending on the size of the customer. Whereas for residential, we looked at a very specific average of 811 kilowatt hours per month. So you would expect bills to go up across the board. Next slide. Participation in the tranches were both very solid, and compared to historical levels, we had expressions of interest, or EOIs, on par with years past, and eligible bidders, likewise, we had 8. We had 8 last year as well, but we actually had more bidders actually bid this year, 8 versus 7 last year. So overall, the participation in the overall auction was very good. Next slide. In addition to the number of bidders overall, we broke down the number of bidders by block and the number of bids. And you can see we had a high number of bids and bidders for all of the Risky blocks, and quite adequate for all 3 MGS blocks, with only 3 bidders for LGS and 2 for GSP, which is something we could improve upon, but we did get a number of bids to show competition between the bidders led to the best price being put forward at the time. Next slide. Last year, there were 5 winning bidders for all the blocks. This year, there were 7, so that's an improvement in the overall level of diversity of suppliers, which is always a good thing when it comes to competition. Next slide. This chart here is very telling about the trend in winning bid prices by customer class by year. And we're looking at a chart that shows each of the customer classes' average winning bid prices for all blocks auctioned for the year by customer class. And you can see overall prices are much higher than last year, as we showed earlier on the first table. Now, what you're seeing here, while it looks like there's an overall increase, and certainly there is, it's worth noting that in 2021, the prices that were achieved in that auction were the all-time record low prices in the history of the standard offer service auction in Delaware. And in 2025, we are seeing for 3 of the customer classes the record high. What it doesn't show is that it's not just generally going upwards, although it is for the last 5 years. When you look back at the years 2012 and 2013, the numbers experienced there were much more similar to the numbers we had. So we had a long period of declining prices, and now they've gone back up and surpassed historical highs to be new highs for all customer classes. Next slide. So this slide here shows the percentage of supply by megawatts or load served by suppliers. So of the 7 suppliers, you can see what they provide by customer class and then what they provide for the total on the far right column. You can see the company Vitol is the largest supplier overall, with Hartree just behind it. Next slide. So in conclusion, the highlights are that the processes, including both the Tranche 1 and Tranche 2 auctions, were well run, and that winning bids were consistent with market conditions. And while certainly it's not the best of news to see that the prices are all-time highs, it is important to note that the prices were within our range of expectations given what market conditions are for energy and capacity. The participation was improved and adequate for risky and the MGS blocks, but there is room for improvement in the LGS and GSP blocks. Next slide. Now, at this point, if you would like me to proceed, we can go over the energy and gas and capacity market data that comprised the market conditions that set the prices that we see today. I assume that's what we want to do.
Yes, sir.
Okay, please proceed. Next slide. So the red line represents market prices for energy in the DPL zone. It's the single biggest component of a bidder's price. And you can see that the red line in 2025 Tranche 2 is higher than the dashed black line, which was just from a couple months ago in 2025's Tranche 1 back in November. And it is much, and both are much higher than the price from Tranche 2 in 2024, which was just a year ago. So you can see that the energy prices, these are the wholesale forward prices at the time, were much higher this tranche versus last tranche and the tranche before that. And this is the single biggest driver of why the bid prices that were received and ultimately averaged to the winning high prices are what they are. So again, while not ideal, they're at least reflective of the actual market that's going on out there in PJM. Next slide. These energy prices you see are largely set by gas prices because gas-fired units set the margin, set the market price, the locational marginal price in PJM for the majority of the hours of energy delivery. So there should be a tight correlation between energy prices and the underlying gas prices, which is the biggest source of the cost of production. And like we saw with the previous slide for energy, the gas prices, the red is higher than the dashed black, which is also higher than the solid black. So they are consistent. And we can look at that in another view on the next slide, which actually shows the correlation in general between the DPL zone energy price and the gas price that is the basis for producing that energy. Next slide. Perhaps the bigger story, though, is the increase in the capacity prices that are a component of the overall bid price, whereas energy prices change hour to hour. Annual prices for capacity prices are set annually. And you can see from 2024 to 2025 period, which was last June 1st to this coming May 31st, the bid price at the initial auction price at the time was $66.15. This year's auction was $270.35. Now, the risky blocks take an average of the 2 years because it's a 2-year delivery period. However, the MGS, LGS, and GSP blocks are based on each year's single value. So you can see why capacity prices are much more important to the overall price as compared to previous years. And while what you see here graphically shows what's going on in terms of dollars per megawatt day, that doesn't translate perfectly well to an understanding of the bid prices. So we also show on the next slide, please, how these translate to dollars per megawatt hour as an estimate of what a supplier bidder would use in terms of the component of the overall bid price that's made up of capacity. And so the blue bars that you see reflect the 2024 bid expectations based on the capacity market, and the orange are for 2025. And you can see a substantial difference where the price in risky for the capacity component has nearly tripled, and for MGS has quadrupled, and the same thing for LGS and GSP. So. And that is the last slide of my presentation, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Doctor, you mentioned in your presentation that there's room for some improvement in a variety of areas. Obviously, the Commission is very much concerned about the price to consumers of all the categories, and we're very desirous of trying to make any improvements whatsoever to favorably affect the price to consumers. What recommendations, if any, does your office have?
Well, I'll preface what I say by telling you again that the prices that were achieved by these auctions for all blocks were consistent with market conditions. So despite it being more desirable to have more and more suppliers, making it more and more competitive, the level of suppliers that we had did result in appropriate prices. So the improvement in participation in terms of getting more suppliers with more bids could enable some confidence that in the future we will continue to have prices that are consistent with market conditions, but there hasn't been a problem with it yet. There's nothing that could have been done materially with more suppliers or more bidders in this past auction that would have substantially helped the market prices versus what was achieved, which were very high prices. However, that said, if the Commission would like to consider spurring more competition, I think that would have to be done at the level of the utility, looking in ways to attract more suppliers to the load, and they would have to take on a special project to entice other suppliers to serve the more risky, maybe that's the wrong choice of words because you have a customer class nicknamed risky, but where there's more risk in certain classes such as LGS and GSP because of customer migration, there may be ways that we can entice more suppliers to bid on those blocks.
Is there a more efficient way to obtain supply for our consumers other than the way we're doing it? In other words, is there another alternative method that we might consider?
Well, there are a number of ways to procure supply, but in general, using a standard offer service or basic generation service or what have you by name from state to state, it doesn't vary too much except in the format of the actual auction, whereas, Delaware uses a dynamic reverse auction. Other states use a sealed bid. Other states use a declining descending clock auction. And there are a number of ways to do it, but in general, without a complete study of what's working and what isn't, I would say the practice of what is going on with the procurement in Delaware is good. It's sort of an industry from a technological standpoint, a bit of a leader in terms of using a dynamic auction with a very good and solid platform provided by NLX. So there's no easy answer to what's best. There are any number of economists that would tell you there are different ways to achieve the best auction results with no pure winner. But as long as the results seem to reflect market conditions, that's the most important thing.
Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Drexler. Dr. Ledzelter, a couple of questions. One, page 4 of your presentation indicates the increases for all classes, and you did mention historical highs. In every single case, is this the highest price you've ever seen?
Well, this is the highest price that's ever been achieved in Delaware. That's a fact.
Okay.
Yes.
My other question is, you base the estimated monthly customer bill impacts based on residential use of 811 kilowatt hours per month. Is that annualized and divided by 12? And is that ever recalculated? Meaning, is 811 going to be the same in a year? Do you change it every year? And who actually sets that usage? Is that something you get from Delmarva?
Okay, that's a very good question, and I'll have to defer on some of the answers to parts of that because those are not my numbers, and while not appropriately footnoted for this visual presentation, all of that information is provided in the written report. So these bill impacts are provided directly from Delmarva and the staff at PHI that has an approach that they use year after year that we've reported on year after year. So all of these are their numbers.
Thank you.
There's more details in the report.
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Gray.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Ledzelter, thank you for the presentation. Would you say that the price of natural gas or the cost of capacity which would you say is the most impactful on the results of the most recent auction? And is there any expectation moving forward that the trend is going to be downward or upward, in your opinion?
That's a very good question. So there's not an easy answer to either part of that, but let me try to explain. Overall, the energy portion, which is driven by the natural gas price, is still the largest part of the bid price that you see. However, the biggest change year over year in the bid prices is due to the change in capacity. Whereas you could get a few percentage points upwards or downwards in a gas price, and that would lead to a commensurate increase or decrease in the underlying energy price. That has a pretty good impact because energy is such a large portion of the overall bid price. But even though capacity is the next largest, smaller piece compared to energy, the price is, quadrupled. So even though it's a smaller piece, the impact it had was greater year over year.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Dr. Ledzelter, it seems to me that it looks like we have a choice of accepting the auction results or not. There's no third alternative that I'm aware of. And it's really sort of difficult to swallow this pill. But, you know, I guess for a variety of years there, we had a lowering curve going south rather than north, and the customers were benefiting from that. So perhaps the only thing we can really hope for now is that once the winter goes by, that perhaps our next auctions will start to trend on a downward slope. Am I right, Dr. Ledzelter? We really, I mean, the auction was competitive. There were sufficient bidders. It was consistent with the marketplace. I'm looking for, like W.C. Fields says, I'm looking for a loophole here, but I don't seem to find one. And there doesn't seem to be any alternative for this commission, except unless you have some suggestions.
Not a suggestion, but when you look at the outlook, it really is going to depend on the future of capacity and capacity auction prices that result from that underlying supply curve in PJM. It's a question of how capacity prices change going forward. Gas prices will always go up and down based on forward markets, supply and demand, and that's going to be an annual thing. But capacity prices are going to depend on what PJM does for capacity going forward. And for what it's worth, misery loves company. All surrounding states are achieving prices here that are consistent with the high prices you see here.
Well, on that note, I would point out that Commissioner Drexler in particular, and this commission and the other commissions in the surrounding states have been fighting the auction price fight for quite some time now. And I guess that fight's going to continue. And hopefully we will get some relief from PJM on that area. I guess we can hope for that anyway.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Gray. If I can just supplement your comments, I think I understood that there has been a lot of pushback from the 11 states in the PJM region with regard to the capacity auction and the outcomes. And I believe that there are a number of governors that have also taken up this issue with PJM, with the FERC, and even in the courts. So I just want to make the point for the record that this commission doesn't have any control over the cost of gas, and we have very little control over PJM's capacity auction and its outcome. So I'm not sure what alternatives your W.C. Fields will find on the matter. But I just wanted to share those comments for the record.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Drexler, and I reiterate what you did say. You know, capacity is the focus of OPSI. We meet and talk maybe 3 times a week. We have more than one board meeting a month. Capacity is, of course, the most important topic, and in fact, the next auction has been delayed because of these capacity issues. And if you look at the 20-year projections for PJM, it's going to be difficult to see how they're going to meet capacity because of the acceleration of the usage of electricity for things like data centers and other electrification. So it definitely is our focus as members of OPSI. It is something that, these OPSI members spend hours and hours and hours on every week determining the best course of action. And we will meet next week. We have a board meeting with PJM, We have a board meeting, and we additionally have other events planned to talk about these issues. So, I mean, it is front of mind, certainly for all of the 11 commissions in PJM 11. And, we're talking about it every day. So, we're doing our best.
Any further comments from the commissioners? Mr. Hartigan, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Thanks, Chairman Winslow. Just regarding the next auction, you're correct. Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania filed a complaint at FERC, which PJM has settled with Pennsylvania and is looking to implement that across the region, whereby there would be a price floor and a price cap in this next auction. I believe PJM has to file that at FERC and receive the FERC's approval before that can be implemented in the next auction. But that is, in our view, a small victory because we were worried without a cap, prices would be higher than what was agreed to in the settlement.
Thank you, Mr. Hartigan.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
this is Ruth Price, acting public advocate, and I was just wondering, sir, PJM has filed, and the commission, FERC has recently approved certain steps to get more bidders in. What do you think that will do to the price?
Well, judging from what Dr. Ledselter said, it would make the bidding more competitive, but not necessarily lower the price because of the supply issue in the marketplace and the auction prices.
Thank you.
Capacity prices.
Correct.
We have a commissioner that would begrudgingly make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Gray. Thanks again, Dr. Ledzelter, for this presentation and for the work that you've done with regard to the auction. I'd like to move that the commission adopt the outcome of the auction as it's been presented.
Second that motion.
And I assume that means that the commission is finding that the auction was competitive, sufficient bidders, and it was consistent with the marketplace, and therefore it was a valid and a good auction.
Successful outcome. Yes, sir.
We will vote then if there's no more discussion. Commissioner Correa.
Aye.
Commissioner Conaway.
Aye.
Commissioner Drexler.
Aye.
Commissioner Gray.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion carries and the auction is approved. Dr. Ledzelter and Brian Geller, thank you so much for your participation. Bring us some better news next time, Doctor.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go on to the hearing schedule. First, we have the application of Chesapeake Utilities Corporation for approval of its environmental rate rider. And I believe we have Bill O'Brien to present that on behalf of Chesapeake.
Thank you, Chair Winslow and Commissioners. Bill O'Brien on behalf of Chesapeake Utilities. This is the hearing on Chesapeake's application for approval of its environmental rider rate to be effective December 1st, 2024. This rider is adjusted annually and provides recovery of the cost of environmental cleanups. Today's application relates to the company's cleanup of the former Seaford Town gas site under an agreement with DENREC. It's a dollar-for-dollar pass-through spread out over 5 years with a true-up. The rate change before you today is the smallest possible billing adjustment, and it is uncontested. While an evidentiary hearing is required, you've already seen the application and the supporting documents, and we're going to try to move this through quickly. The commission should have in front of them an exhibit log. I believe that all parties agree that the exhibits on the exhibit log are admissible, and therefore I would ask that those exhibits be marked and entered into evidence.
This is, without objection, that is done.
Chesapeake would like to call Marie Kozel as a witness and ask that she be sworn.
I do.
Please state your name, address, and position with Chesapeake Utilities.
My name is Marie Kozel. My business address is 500 Energy Lane, Suite 100, Dover, Delaware, 19901, and I am a regulatory manager with Chesapeake Utilities Corporation.
Did you prepare and file an application for approval to implement a new rate under the company's environmental rider tariff provisions?
Yes, I did.
In connection with that application, have you also prepared pre-filed testimony dated November 1st, 2024?
Yes, I have.
If I were to ask you today the questions set forth in your pre-filed testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Please summarize the company's proposal in this docket.
In this application, the company is requesting approval of its environmental rider, proposing to change the rate level of 0.0011 per CCF to a surcharge of 0.0012 per CCF, effective for service rendered December 1st, 2024 through November 30th, 2025. Chesapeake incurred approximately $43,000 of actual environmental expenses during the environmental cost year ending September 30th, 2024, which consisted of consulting, legal, and other expenses related to the Seaford Town gas site. Chesapeake followed the approved methodology to calculate the proposed rate of 0.0012 per CCF. As a result of this proposed change, an average residential heating customer using 700 CCF per year will experience an annual increase of approximately 0.006% or 7 cents annually.
Have you had a chance to review staff's memo to the commission in this matter from Shona Marshall?
Yes, I have.
Do you agree with her statements and recommendations?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Ms. Kozel is available for cross-examination.
Is there any cross-examination?
Kate Workman for staff. We have no questions for Ms. Kozel.
No cross from the DPA. Thank you.
Okay, on behalf of staff, Kate Workman, please.
Kate Workman again for staff. I'd like to call Shauna Marshall to the stand and ask that she be sworn in. Please state your name and business address for the record. By whom are you employed?
The Delaware Public Service Commission.
What is your position with the commission?
I'm a public utility analyst.
And in connection with your employment, have you performed certain review and investigation in this docket?
Yes, I've reviewed the application, the application, the testimony, and invoices for the contractors and consultants in this docket.
Can you briefly summarize the application filed by Chesapeake Utility Corporation in docket number 24-1211?
Yes. Yes, Chesapeake filed their environmental rider rate application November 1st, 2024. They proposed a rate of 0.0012 per CCF, which is an increase from the previously approved rate of 0.0011 per CCF to be effective on or after December 1st, 2024.
What is your recommendation to the commission today?
Staff performed a review of the application, testimony submitted by Mrs. Marie Kozel, and additional supporting invoices provided by the company for accuracy and completeness. Staff verified the mathematical accuracy of the documentation comprising the rate and did not find any manifest errors. Based on staff's review and analysis, the application complies with the current environmental rider rate tariff on file with the commission and is just and reasonable. Therefore, staff respectfully recommends the commission approve the application as submitted.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Ms. Marshall is now available for any cross-examination.
Is there any cross?
No, thank you, Chair.
No cross from DPA. Thank you.
Any further witnesses?
Staff has no further witnesses.
And DPA doesn't either?
The DPA does not have a witness, but supports the proposed form of order.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Commissioner Conaway, looks like you're ready.
I move that we adopt proposed order number 10647 as presented.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Not hearing any. Commissioner Correa.
Aye.
Commissioner Conaway.
Aye.
Commissioner Drexler.
Aye.
Commissioner Gray.
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you.
And Ms. Workman and, gosh, Ruth Ann's not there now, but anyway, Sam, thank you. The next one is the formal complaint of, excuse me, David S. Neal and Kathy Chan against Delmarva Power and Light. And I'd like to recognize Ms. Workman with respect to this matter.
Thank you, Chair. Kate Workman, on behalf of the commission, I kind of wanted to take a few minutes. This is an uncommon hearing that we do here. We haven't done one in 4 or 5 years. So I wanted to take a moment so that the parties and the commission have an understanding of what we're here to do today. Procedurally, at this point, a hearing examiner has written an order and recommended that in this matter, the commission dismiss the complaint filed by the complainants. There is no order yet, however, because the hearing examiner's order is not final. The commission is the final authority. We're here today to determine whether the commission is going to choose to accept that order or reject that order. And if they choose to accept the order, then the complainants, well, the parties will have their appeal rights. If they choose to reject that order, then they would go on to have a hearing with commission or the hearing examiner Lawrence. First, I want to give a summary of the hearing examiner Lawrence's findings and recommendations to the commission that he put in the order. It is designated order 10597. Mainly what he found and what he recommended, he considered the complaint, the answer, the motions to dismiss, and the motions for summary judgment from both parties. He recommends that the commission grant Delmarva's motion to dismiss for the following reasons. He found that the complaint does not state a claim for which relief can be granted because the complainant failed to plead an injury in fact or state a claim for a violation of the Delaware Code, a rule, a tariff, or a commission order. Additionally, the hearing examiner found that the complainant requested that the respondent switch the rate category of the complainant, which the respondent complied after an initial denial. So there was an initial denial, but then in a timely manner, the hearing examiner found that the rate category was changed, which renders the request for relief moot. No issue of fact between the parties exists on that matter, according to the hearing examiner. The complainant also requested that the respondent refund amounts for their failure to switch the complainant's rate category. The hearing examiner found that the tariff was not violated because of the short period of time between the complainant's request and when the service classification was changed, so that there's no injury in fact. The complainants requested that the commission compel the respondent to modify the tariff and refund all customers for alleged hidden rate information and failing to place customers in the appropriate rate classification. The hearing examiner found that those claims were baseless as the respondent follows the filed rate doctrine, so they do not have rates other than what the commission has already approved. And those approved tariffs and rates are imputed knowledge to the customer as they are public documents and public records. Hearing examiner Lawrence also found that the current tariff, which allows customers to choose their rate classification when applicable, is appropriate because of the legal protections that residential customers have over commercial customers. The complainant disagrees with the order and disagrees with the hearing examiner's assessment and filed exceptions to pinpoint the areas of their disagreement. And at this time, I would like to invite the complainants to explain their position on the order to the commission, focusing on the disagreements that were pointed out in the exceptions that were filed. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, commissioners. I'm David Neal, petitioner.
Excuse me, can you pull the mic right up to your lips so that you can?
How's that?
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Yes, I'm David Neal, petitioner. This is my wife, Kathy Chan, our co-petitioner. The main relief that I'm requesting today is that the commission find that Delmarva violated the tariff. And I want to just clarify some of the statements that were just made. The commissioner found that my request for what I'm calling, I don't know if you guys are lawyers, but it's the declaratory relief. So I'm asking that the commission declare that Delmarva violated the tariff. And I'm doing that because I called the Delmarva and said, I want to switch my rate from this to that. And the tariff says that Delmarva shall make these rates available to customers. And the customer service agent said to me 3 times, that rate is not available. And I'm saying that that's a violation. What the commissioner said was, well, it's moot because they switched you. But mootness in a statutory regime doesn't apply. That's like saying, I got a speeding ticket and I'm going to court and I tell the judge, well, but I stopped speeding. It's moot. When you violate a statute, it's a violation. And so all that I'm asking is that the commission confirm and declare that Delmarva violated the tariff when they refused to switch my service classification. That's it. That's all I'm asking. So there's I think a misunderstanding from the hearing examiner on what mootness means in a statutory regime. You can't have mootness in a statutory regime. Either you violated the law or you didn't. What the implication is and what your damages are, that's different. But that's not what I'm asking. I'm just asking to declare that they violated the tariff.
Mr. Neal, are you speaking on behalf of both parties?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Jordan?
I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, I have one question before we proceed to Mr. Jordan.
Sure, go ahead.
Who is the customer or the meter owner in this matter?
It's Knowledge Transfer was the initial owner, which is Kathy and Myers LLC. I am now also a customer on the account.
During the time frame of this dispute, were you in status as an owner of the meter and a customer of Delmarva?
Was I personally?
I think the question is clear.
I was not personally a customer. No.
Thank you. No further questions?
Mr. Jordan?
Thank you, Chair Winslow. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brian Jordan on behalf of Delmarva Power. And I'm going to actually turn things over to my colleague, Zhizhong Shen, who will represent Delmarva on this as well.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. Zhizhong Shen on behalf of Delmarva. Delmarva respectfully requests that the Commission adopt the hearing examiner's order to respond to the petitioner's comments just a few moments ago. I think the hearing examiner's order squarely addresses the claim, and in granting Delmarva's motion to dismiss, the hearing examiner properly found that there was no tariff provision violated at any time, and petitioners have not identified any tariff provision that they contend was violated. As to the comment that the hearing examiner misunderstood mootness, I'm not quite clear what the petitioners mean when they say that he misunderstood mootness as in statutory regime, but I think the order is clear that any hypothetical injury was mooted. But to be clear, Delmarva does not concede that there was any injury. And in fact, looking at the bills that the petitioners incurred prior to Delmarva agreeing to transfer the account from residential to a non-residential rate, you can see that there was in fact no injury. In fact, the charges, the electric charges decreased slightly for that particular billing cycle, gas charges increased. And so, you know, whatever angle we look at as far as mootness, there is no cognizable claim that exists currently. And to address Commissioner Gray's question, correct that the customer on the account was Knowledge Transfer LLC at the time of Mr. Neal's initial request. And then I believe Mr. Neal added himself to the account in addition to the LLC following his complaint and following Delmarva's transfer of the account from a residential to a non-residential rate. And as far as the exceptions listed in petitioner's filing, none of them have any merit. As stated, the hearing examiner fully adjudicated the argument that there was a tariff violation, and under the filed rate doctrine, the filed rate doctrine precludes petitioner's claims. Petitioners also made a reference that the hearing examiner erroneously made a finding about voluntary selection of residential service. Again, that's the order was not a factual finding, but it was a correct statement as a matter of law because of the filed rate doctrine, which I do note that the petitioners ignored entirely in their briefing. And there's no indication that the hearing examiner's order turned on any sort of factual finding there. And as far as the petitioner's policy arguments regarding tariff modifications, it seems clear from the briefing that petitioners do not care about the regulatory protections that exist for residential customers. But I think this commission would agree that they are actually quite critical. They're built into the tariff, they're built into statute, they're built into the regulations. They're there for a reason. And so the notion that a residential customer should be counseled into trying to switch to a commercial rate, even if their usage qualifies them for it technically under the tariff, the policy argument that Delmarva should be expending resources on encouraging residential customers to move into commercial rates is completely contrary to public policy. And I think I do want to note that I think at bottom, the complaint and the exceptions are kind of premised on a fundamental misunderstanding of the rate design and service classifications. Utility rates are not like a Netflix plan where a customer can choose from a menu of subscription prices. That's just not how the rate design works. Commercial rates are not alternatives to residential rates. The customers taking service in a residential home, they should be in a residential rate. And so I think the hearing examiner's order is free from error, and the commission and Delmarva respectfully requests that the commission adopt the proposed order. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shen. Commissioners, do you have any questions of the parties?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Gray. And yes, I have a couple of issues, I guess, and questions, but they may be for the attorney who's supporting the commission in this matter. If this gentleman was not an owner of the LLC at the time the issue in this matter, then I'm not sure that Mr. Neal has standing to bring a complaint in the matter, number one. Number two, if you're making a complaint on behalf of an LLC, a legal entity other than one's own self, usually requires an attorney for the LLC in order to represent that complaint. And I don't know whether Mr. Neal is the attorney for Knowledge Transfer LLC, or he's bringing this complaint as an individual. So I could use some clarification in making an informed decision here.
Chair Winslow, This would require me to provide some legal advice to the commission. So I would request respectfully that we go into executive session just for a few minutes so that I can give you my opinion on those questions.
Let me, before we consider that, why don't we talk about what we're here to do today, and that is either accept or reject the hearing examiner's decision. And the questions that we just talked about, obviously, if we accept the hearing examiner's position and the parties decide to continue the search for the violation, won't they be able to make the arguments? Won't the staff be able to make their DP&L be able to make those arguments that Commissioner Gray just referred to?
Yes.
And so we can't make a final determination on that today. All we can do is either accept or reject the hearing examiner's decision, correct?
I would say that the commission could sua sponte bring up an issue of standing if they so chose. And so it could be a relevant issue, and the commission would have their choice of avenues in which to follow.
So we'd have to, okay.
What I'm trying to say, Chair, is it your call?
I would like to accommodate Commissioner Gray, as I think I almost always do, but assuming he's correct in what he's saying, then we should accept the hearing examiner's decision, I would think. So I would put to Commissioner Gray, is it necessary to do that examination if you are in the mind to accept the hearing examiner's decision?
I am leaning toward accepting the hearing examiner's findings. I have read them. They are compelling. And I can make a motion for my fellow commissioners that we adopt the hearing examiner's findings in this matter.
For the record, Chair Winslow, I would ask that the commission give an explanation for why they are choosing to adopt these procedures, as that's going to be required in the order that the commission's going to put out. Just why the commission is choosing to accept the order. Thank you.
I believe that what Commissioner Gray is saying is that he's making that motion based upon the findings made in the hearing examiner's decision.
Yes, and to further clarify, if I draw a boundary strictly around the hearing examiner's findings, it is not clear or apparent to me any definition of harm in the matter. It is not clear to me that the complainant has been and was at the time of this incident an owner in the entity. And so I am convinced that the hearing examiner got it right, and therefore I recommend and move that the commission adopt his findings.
Thank you.
I will second that motion.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Commissioner Correa.
Aye.
Commissioner Conaway.
Aye.
Commissioner Drexler.
Aye.
Commissioner Gray.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion carries. Mr. Neal, I want to thank you for your patience with us. It's been a fairly long period of time, and I know you've been at this for quite a long period of time as well. But you do know what you're, you still have an opportunity to make your arguments. And so we'll maybe see you again sometime in the near future, but we send our best wishes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Mr. Hartigan, any comments for the good of the order?
Yes, Chairman Winslow, just briefly, I wanted to bring the commission up to speed on a couple meetings which occurred recently regarding the Delmarva High Bill situation that has occurred over the last couple months. Last Friday, Senator Hansen convened a Senate Energy Committee meeting where Delmarva provided a presentation highlighting the various components of the bill, And the company said that the primary driver was the increased usage due to the colder weather in January. And also the statement redesign contributed to some confusion because it brought the delivery charge more prominent on the bill in the form of a pie chart. And I think customers were taken aback by the proportionality of the delivery charge compared to their supply charges and overall bill. So there were questions from legislators regarding various components of the bill, which the company addressed. Some legislators questioned whether the state's renewable energy mandate was a contributing factor, and Senator Hansen refuted that. Internally, we've looked at the RPS charge over the last year and comparing this January to last January. The RPS charge this January was 74 cents higher. So this really is more of a usage story than an RPS issue. I did testify at the committee hearing that the commission is somewhat limited during rate cases and that you have to apply the business judgment rule as opposed to the prudence standard, which is used in every other state. And there was over an hour of public comment where various members of the public blamed the high bills largely on Delmarva, the commission, or the RPS policy of the state. Last night, I attended a meeting of the Wilmington City Council Intergovernmental Committee. And there I provided a brief presentation of the high bill complaints and went over the same things that were covered Friday in the Senate Energy Committee meeting. I did indicate one underlying factor that we haven't really discussed is the amount of money Delmarva has spent on system reliability projects, which is great. They've now achieved a very high marks in that regard and are probably one of the most reliable systems in the country. But that comes at a cost, and those costs are recovered through rate cases, which the company routinely files with the commission, as you know. So we talked about that a little bit. Both Ms. Price and Marcus Beal from Delmarva were there. Mr. Beal had a presentation, and Ms. Price made some comments as well. I did want to bring to your attention that the Council is considering a resolution that would call for a moratorium on electric utility disconnections and late fees for 6 to 12 months. The committee chair, Ms. Darby, mentioned that she's going to amend the resolution to include a comment about electric suppliers. We did have one comment where a customer was served by a third-party supplier, which resulted in her bill increasing in January, and we get those complaints from time to time, but I did mention that overall, third-party supply works in the state. There are a few bad actors that when we find examples, we try to take action on. So overall, still a lot of activity regarding this subject. I have had conversations with the governor's office and Senator Hansen about potential legislation, but nothing has been announced yet, but I'll keep you updated as things move forward.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Gray. Matt, may I?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, may I have the floor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So yes, along the same lines in terms of the increased billings over the past few months, if for those of you unaware, I mean, the online presence of criticism around this matter has been substantial. And I think Matt did a great job. I was an observer by Zoom on the Senate hearing as well as on the City Council committee meeting yesterday. And, it's created a windstorm, and I think Delmarva has done a fantastic job with most windstorms, but this is one that, is kind of really, really out of the gate. And I have a sense and a feel that it may die out after the winter timeframe, but the elephant is still outside of the room, which is the weather, and even throughout this week, it's still going to be brutally cold. I looked around yesterday to do some benchmarking with our fellow commissions in Maryland, for example, and I noted that they have implemented what's called BSA. Are you familiar with that? It's called Bill Stabilization Agreement, where they have literally decoupled the consumption from the supply charge. And my sense is I'd love to have staff and Delmarva and the DPA take a look at the ability for us to consider similar actions here in Delaware. And the reason I'm thinking in this direction, and I share with my fellow commissioners, is that it looks like Delmarva does have the capacity to amortize the residential bill over the course of a year, evening it out. And so there should be the ability to estimate what the supply charge is for a year and amortize that as well as a fixed fee, as opposed to a variable rate. And I think that that might tamp down on some of the extreme fluctuations for ratepayers during the course of the winter months. And I think that's what a lot of the ratepayers are looking for, is they're looking for some predictability and stability. And I've studied the 10K of Delmarva's performance from 2024, and it looks quite good. And I'm at least making the assessment as a layperson that we've done a good job of keeping the utility healthy. But the other side of that coin, we've got to make sure that rates are just and reasonable on behalf of the ratepayer. So I think that there's a lot that can be contributed to solving this problem. And I don't want to just, walk past it and say that, it's going to get warm and the problem will go away. As we know, we've got the PJM challenges coming mid-year, and we've got to do something proactively to try and resolve the issues at hand. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. No further comments. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. Anyone else have any comments?
Commissioner?
Yes, ma'am.
This is Ruth Price. I have a response to the commissioner. I just wanted to point out that there is a program, that Delmarva does have a program where they can spread your charges so that they are the same amount for each month. That's a monthly billing predictability asset. And I think I have been recommending to customers who call into the DPA to look at that very seriously. And they do have a true up once a year. So that is something that can help and does help customers. That's all I needed to say. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Ruth Ann, excuse me, for one point of clarification here. I understand how the bill paying is evened over the course of 12 months. I'm discussing a little nuanced difference here, because the supply charge in the bill is factored. There is a factor that multiplies against your consumption. And as the winter gets colder and you consume more, the supply charge goes up. So my goal in this consideration is to look at making the supply charge fixed. This is something that I would reference as a benchmark to the Maryland Commission, which has implemented what's called a bill stabilization agreement that fixes the supply charge. So when you consume more in the winter, it doesn't go up against a factor. It stays constant. But Delmarva has to do their homework in the back office to determine what do they need over the course of a year in the way of a fixed supply charge. But at least it may reduce the fluctuation of the ratepayers' bills during the winter.
Thank you. I understand, and I agree with you. If they could do that, that would be helpful.
Well, unless there's something else, we should adjourn. Anything else? Not hearing anything else?
Next meeting is March 12th.
Okay, thank you, Matt. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.